Hey everybody, today we are going to talk about communication. This is a very common problem between parents and teenagers, and it's one that people seem to really struggle with, so we're going to talk about it today. We're going to do multiple weeks on this topic. I have a really fun 5-week or 5-day boot camp planned about gender communication, and probably do that this fall. But today we're just going to talk about communication kind of in general. I want to talk about 4 styles of communication, but first I want to read this quote because I thought it was interesting. Judith E. Glaser, in her book Conversational Intelligence, says that 9 out of 10 conversations miss the mark, meaning we have an intention when we speak, but our style, our patterns, and our perceptions get in the way of what the other person is picking up. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So if you just keep this number in your head, that means that 9 out of 10 conversations with your teen have missed the mark, that's a lot of conversations that we may not be exactly communicating what we think that we are. There's a lot of benefits of healthy communication that a lot of us are aware of. Obviously, it can help you have a healthier relationship. It can help you be healthier physically because you're able to express your emotions. You have better physical health, better job success, healthier families, healthier friendships, higher self-esteem. There's a lot of benefits to learning how to communicate. And the great thing is that while our teens are in our home, because their brains are developing so rapidly, it gives us a really great opportunity to help them really train their brains to be better communicators their whole lives. So let's talk about 4 different styles, communication styles that most people use. A lot of times you tend to kind of fall into one of them, but all of us have used all of them, and sometimes it may depend on the type of relationship that you're in. You might be one, say, with your parent because you're falling into old habits from when you were a child, maybe another with your boss, maybe another with your spouse, that sort of thing. So the first one is passive. So passive communicators have a really hard time describing how they feel. They have difficulty expressing themselves. They often have built up anger or resentment because they think that they're communicating and they're not. You can recognize a passive communicator when they don't make eye contact. They have a hard time saying no. They can be really quiet. Maybe their actions don't necessarily match their words, though that can also fall under passive aggressive. They might have poor posture. They may have a hard time giving their opinions. So you might ask, hey, do you want to go do this or do you want to go do this? Well, I don't care. Sometimes shy people tend to fall into this, though sometimes also passive aggressive depending on who they are. They might say things like, oh, it just doesn't matter. I'm just going to go with the flow. They often don't like conflict. They would rather just kind of suppress their feelings and their emotions and their thoughts than potentially create conflict. So what to do as a parent. So if you notice your teen falling into this, or you yourself, here's a couple of things. First is to watch out for it. Watch for the things that I just mentioned and be aware that maybe your teen is being passive, that maybe they're not opening up to you very much. You can try and ask really good questions. They don't like to be interrogated. I guess no teen likes to be interrogated, but try and recognize that you may not be getting the whole story from them. And so be patient and maybe help them kind of process some of the emotions they might be feeling. It might be good. I'm going to do a whole week on conflict resolution at some point, and kind of difficult conversations. But that would be a good conversation to have with someone who's passive. They're afraid of conflict, and so kind of teaching them that conflict is normal and that it can be healthy, and how to handle it and how to handle the emotions that surround when people disagree with you could be very helpful for a passive communicator. So the second one is an aggressive communicator. So people who are aggressive, they're obviously on the other side of the spectrum from passive. They tend to issue commands, ask questions rudely. They may not be the best listener. They can come across as being very opinionated or sometimes stubborn. You can recognize this when they talk over other people. They are, like I said, they're kind of poor listeners. They can be controlling or demanding. They maybe don't compromise very well. They might point their fingers or kind of get up in your face. They might frown or criticize or threaten. My tween can sometimes fall into this one, and he can be kind of threatening. Maybe they don't take responsibility if something gets pointed out to them. There's some phrases that kind of help recognize this sort of communication style. It's my way or the highway. I'm right and you're wrong because I said so. Or they may act entitled. So a couple of things that you can do if you are noticing your teen falling into this aggressive category. One is to just call them on it. If they're saying something rude, you could say things like, is there a different way that you could say that? Can you word that in a different way? It hurt my feelings. Use I statements. And also, some people don't recognize this, but I think that, at least with my teen and some other people that I've noticed who have this style, a lot of times it is also covering up poor self-esteem. Sometimes they move to shame or they move to guilt, and so they cover that by being aggressive. And so conflict resolution can also help, but also just teaching about self-esteem and some identity things, and helping them recognize how to handle the emotions of being wrong. So it's really hard. Those are difficult emotions. Pride gets in the way. And so sometimes we have a hard time admitting that we're wrong. And so sometimes when people are coming off as aggressive, it's because they actually aren't sure whether or not what they're saying is right, or they're wanting you to tell them, like give them positive feedback. So just a couple things to think if you have an aggressive communicator. So passive aggressive communicators. So this is the hardest one for me. I can kind of deal with a little bit better with passive and aggressive, but passive aggressive just kind of irritates me a little bit. So passive aggressive seems passive on the surface, but they have hidden resentment and hidden an agenda sometimes underneath. So frequent sarcasm is definitely part of being passive aggressive. Sometimes your words don't align with your actions or your facial expressions. They have difficulty, also some difficulty acknowledging their emotions. This often happens when you were maybe raised to be kind of quiet or passive, and you don't know how to handle the emotions underneath, and so then you're aggressive in your actions, or your words are like half and half. You say just kidding or stuff like that a lot. Fine, whatever you want is fine. I see this a lot in teenagers, my teen as well. Just they don't really want the conflict, but they kind of want the conflict, and so you get both mixed messages. And then I was joking, I was kidding. People don't say this anymore. When I was growing up, it was psych. Did you guys ever say psych? So it's just kind of the mixed messages that can be hard to understand with passive aggressive. So a couple of tips for parents with passive aggressive. So the first one is really, like the others, like call it. Say, you know what? I'm noticing that your emotions and what you're saying aren't really matching your actions. Like you're rolling your eyes, you're looking away, you don't seem like your actions aren't matching your words. And so, because they may not even recognize that they're doing it. And so it can be something that you just start to point out and then ask, which one is it? Either one is okay with me. Like whether you're angry, it's okay if you're angry with me. It's okay if you're resentful. You don't have to cover that up by being quote unquote nice or quote unquote kind or whatever. We can disagree. We can discuss this. It's healthier to discuss it than to hide behind kind of passive aggressive behavior. So the last one, the healthiest one, is assertive communicators. So this is the most effective way. It encourages dialogue while still considering the needs of other people. You can recognize it with some of these behaviors. One is they're confident. They are able to say what they want and what they need without hidden agendas or hiding behind anything. You use I statements, the ability to say no, maintain good eye contact, body language, and just kind of the ability to listen and speak. So you can listen to what the other person's saying and then express your own opinion and then listen again and then express your opinion and that sort of thing. This doesn't really necessarily need any tips, I guess, because this is the healthiest form of communication. But some kind of ways to encourage it is to model it, and to let them see you speak assertively but also listen. And so just kind of help them recognize that that's the healthy way to do it. You can give teens an opportunity to try again, if they're using one of these other 3 ways, and say, hey, would you like to try that again? Is there a way that you could word that you would be assertive but not aggressive, or assertive but not passive? Some kind of assertive communication, you notice phrases like, I'm responsible for my own happiness, I respect the needs and opinions of others, we all have the right to respect ourselves express ourselves respectfully and honestly. Of course, your teen is not going to say those words, right? But those are just sort of the types of values and that people who are assertive have when they're communicating. So, kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about is just kind of some conversational techniques or some different things that you can try. One is to express your needs confidently and do that in front of your teenager. If they hurt your feelings, say, I need you to please reword that. That was really painful. Take ownership of your emotions in front of your teen. Say, we're talking and my feelings are hurt because of X, Y, and Z, and so I need a little bit of space, so I'm going to walk away and come back and talk about it again. We talked about this a few weeks ago, but really practice and learn to say no and to set boundaries. Find the right time to talk to your teen, both for yourself, like what is your mindset, and then what is your teen's mindset, because if you're not in the right place, then it's not going to be effective conversation. Understand first. This is not what I always jump to. I'm a bit of a talker, and so I'm really working on trying to listen first and kind of modeling that and using that with my teen. My husband, too, tends to move to a little bit of lecture. I just had a conversation last night, and I was like, lecture, and he's like, our kids aren't going to ever do anything wrong because they're not going to want to get a lecture from dad. So really try and, understand first before expressing your opinion. Maintain eye contact. This is something that I've noticed with teens, especially I think because of phones, and myself as well. We have a tendency to be uncomfortable sometimes with eye contact and with personal space, with using our hands, how we communicate. Teens text so much more now, and they're online, and so really teaching them how to kind of turn their heart to people and how to maintain eye contact, how to listen, how to not have distractions, how to ask questions. Those are really important for communication as well. And just kind of the final thing, one more thing too. When you're discussing communication or anything with your teen, be careful to use very neutral descriptions, but that are accurate. And so this will teach your teen to not jump to conclusions. So if your teen has let's say you find some trash in their room and you know that they're eating candy in their bed and they're not supposed to or whatever, then just say something like, hey, instead of accusing them, you were eating this, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I found these wrappers by your bed. What's going on? Or something like that. And so to kind of maintain that neutrality. So that will teach them that, especially online and with their friends and other interactions, to try and be neutral instead of coming out as being really accusing other people. So just kind of a final quote. Powerful communication means understanding your own needs and learning how to express them clearly, while also valuing the messages that you receive from others. So that's all I have today. We're going to talk about it a lot more this week in the group, and I hope that it was helpful for you.